Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Wrestling Underground podcast. I am your host, as always, Chad Porter. Joining me is the glorious one himself, Marcus Green. Marcus, how the hell are you?
Good, man. It's been a long time since we hit a regular Tuesday.
Right? So, Roadblock's currently on. Obafemi won. Hardy Boys won. TNA split the night. MLW had a pretty solid show this weekend. It was, I think it was called Intimidation Games. Main event was lackluster, but Matt Riddle can only do so much.
Ugh.
I don't know why they're hell bent on building around him. That roster is so damn good, and I feel like they have so many better options than fucking Matt Riddle, and I don't know why they're so hell bent on doing it. Paul Walter Hauser, who played Stingray in Cobra Kai, is actually a fun little celebrity wrestler. I think people should be keeping an eye on.
Yeah.
Solid stuff. It was a decent show. They're building up for the Battle Riot next month. I, for one, am excited. Apparently, I think his name is Juicy Finney or Juicy Finney, however you want to pronounce it. He was a member of the Samoan. I think they called themselves the SWAT team, kind of as a homage to the obviously the other Samoan SWAT team. But that was Jacob Fatu's last group in MLW. It was him, Lance Anoa'i, and Juicy Finney, I think is how you pronounce it. So he's back in the company. We'll see what happens with that. But that should be interesting. But today we're going to talk about the TNA roster, which is ironic because I'm watching Women of Wrestling on Pluto TV right now. I put up my TV finally. God, it looks good. Got it drilled into the wall. Did it all myself. Super construction right there. So if you hear a crashing sound, it was just the TV falling. But like, I watch all this wrestling, Marcus. Not Raw or SmackDown, because I'm not gonna waste my time on the spoilt milk that is WWE. But I watch AEW, I watch MLW, TNA, NWA, New Japan, indie stuff. I love wrestling. It's stupid. I love it. It's so dumb. It's my favorite thing. I got a Micro Brawlers collection that's developing, right? Yet, the one thing I have to admit though is when my stupid favorite hobby is just stupid, and not stupid like a fun thing, like oh that little kitty cat's so stupid, it's adorable. But in the that cat tried to eat tar today, he's stupid, and I feel like that's where we're getting with the TNA roster. One of the things that I find very fascinating is TNA's inability to bring in up and coming indie talent and make them stars. Now, this has always kind of been a issue for the company, but for a while they would say, well, like we're not going to worry about bringing in Teddy Hart or CM Punk or trying to think of other big names at the time. They did bring in Jimmy Rave. Technically, they brought in CM Punk and Teddy Hart too. But they weren't going to bring in, all the, the top indie stars. Your grand, what the fuck is his name? The Dragon guy from PWG. I can't fucking remember his name. Black Dragon, something like that.
Brand.
They're not going to bring in, uh, you know, the top indie talent of the day, in 2006 because they had Sting. They had Rhino, Booker T, Kevin Nash. And granted, we're talking about 2007 then. They had DDP for a short while. They had, Kurt Angle, Scott Steiner. They had these big names that could draw TV ratings. They had, maybe not the best talent roster, but they had a pretty hefty name brand. And then you saw Samoa Joe and AJ Styles, and then people like Gail Kim and the Knockouts. And all these other aspects that were already on the roster started to gain traction and momentum too. And then they brought in guys like Jeff Hardy, and later on they brought in, Mr. Anderson, and it became a stacked roster. So like, yeah, you didn't need to bring in Tyler Black or John Moxley or El Generico. That you didn't need to bring these guys in because you had such a stacked roster with the likes of Frankie Kazarian and Bobby Roode and James Storm and so many others keeping up the mid card. But now I feel like we're looking at a roster full of like, not to disparage the man, but popes, D'Angelo De Niro's, not the biggest names on your roster, but shouldn't be your headliner. And I'm starting to get this feeling that TNA's roster is losing whatever uniqueness it had the longer and longer we go forward with this NXT partnership. They're not bringing in many in the way of unique talent, unique indie talent. There's so many names that could be brought in to bolster the X division. That these interesting dynamic people you see in GCW, your Ninja Max. MLW's bringing all these very interesting dudes. Brett Ryan Goslin's pretty interesting. They got Akira. You could see people like Facade come in, and for whatever reason, these developing indie names aren't really getting shots. Instead, we're getting Zaya Brookside, who generic as shit. And then we have all these NXT talent, and I'm like, if this was the NXT from 2000 and what was it, 11, 10, 12, whenever the first year of NXT, not the first season, but like the first year where you had Richie Steamboat and Tyler Black and Neville and all them. If you had that roster coming into TNA today, cool. But you don't. Instead, you have a pretty uninteresting, in my opinion at least, heel in Desmond Xavier. I think it works a lot better as a face. His group of I don't know who you are's and will be out of the business in 4 years. I think those are their Christian names. You have women who keep popping up on the roster. Like Cora Jade is a very mediocre, if not bad, pro wrestler whose entire gimmick is she's trying to be a taller AJ Lee, but without the credibility. She just didn't Cora Jade just get concussed at the hands of Jordan Grace, so she may not even be able to wrestle in the blow-off match that this has all been building to. And all the while, we're sacrificing time that could be used to develop Savannah Evans. I forget the Chinese wrestler they signed. She was an NXT talent too.
Oh, something Ming Lee, something
Yeah, I
like that.
think
Yeah.
something like that. You could be giving her time. You could sign people like Holidead or Holidead, I think is how you pronounce it, or like any number of the women from WoW. There's so many.
Yeah.
Santana Garrett is still a free agent, and she's one of the best workers in the women's division in the world, and she can't get a shake. But instead, I have to
Yeah.
watch, generic NXT woman number 6.
Yeah, we talked about Gary down too, well, a while back. Like people always date her, but they won't, get in a relationship with her. I don't know what that is.
I think she's the perfect person to build your division around while you look for the next up and coming star. I don't know why we're recycling these NXT talents, and I don't know why we're giving up 30 minutes a show to NXT talents when you have so little talent on your roster, or at least so little overtime on your roster, that you can keep affording to give it to somebody else's mediocre scraps. And it wouldn't be that bad if this past week we just found out Alexander Hammerstone is no longer with the company. You
That's
lost
coming off
Hammerstone
of
and Gresham?
that's two serious names coming off of losing Bailey, losing Grace, losing Alexander.
You've now
Um,
lost 5 of your best workers,
you know,
and you're replacing them with what's her name, Katana, and her whole gimmick is she comes down wearing yellow tracksuit and carrying Katana. Oh, cool, cool. That'll get over.
Yeah, Jake something's on the mend. You need to be doing something with him. Um,
You're almost forced to at this point.
yeah, it's not looking. It's not looking. Like you said, they got named. I wonder if I guess is Cedric's wife still wrestling? Swole?
No,
Do we
not
know?
that I'm aware of.
Yeah, but like you said, you got the Wild Girls. You got people out there. You could bring in somebody like potentially Alexander to bolster certain things, but he may very well try to go and complete. The Hurt Syndicate, which I can't blame him if he tried. But it's names out there, like you said, this NXT thing. A lot of these names are getting more shine in TNA than they have in NXT, which is coming off the argument we just the discussion I should say that we just had talking about how TNA has always been the WWE's turret shiner in that regard. So yeah, they do need to work on securing names to cover up some of the ones we just talked about losing. Like you said, the Hammerstone fumble is perplexing in itself, and I feel like in that video he posted. I wonder how you feel about that video he posted. He literally said everything except they dropped the ball with me.
And they absolutely did.
Yeah.
This is a dude who gave me 1987 Hulk Hogan era charisma vibes. And you instead just put him in black trunks and had him wrestle a few matches. And it's like, but you're going to give Cora Jade 13 weeks to build a program with Masha Slamovich. That's fucking stupid. Here's the other problem. And this is the biggest one. So, like, if you build your roster, right, around top guys, straws, and then you add like a Derek Bateman, you give him a different gimmick, a different makeover, you make him EC3, that's okay. Yeah, you can bring in, a couple NXT people every year or two and give them a new gimmick, new look, new vibe, new everything. You can do that. But what's happening is this roster is just bringing in people who were already in the WWE and didn't change them up. Like AJ Francis. Like I think there's like 24 people, maybe more, who were in the WWE at one point. I don't think Chris Bay was. Let me double check real quick. I'm pretty sure he wasn't. I feel like if he was, he had like a. No, he was. He was on
Yeah.
205 Live for a brief moment.
Yeah. I've actually been uh, ironically impressed with Francis, what he's been able to do, particularly with the young Navarro with him.
Yeah.
They've actually been entertaining tag team. I'm surprised they haven't given them a more serious run of those tag titles.
But like here, you have AJ Francis,
Yeah.
Ash by Elegance, Brian Myers. Was Champagne Singh in WWE at one point? Or Campaign Singh, or whatever his name is? I don't think he was. I spelled TNA wrong. Let's see. No. All right, so you got AJ, Bay, that's two. Although I'm not going to count Bay because it was only like 2 episodes. AJ, Ash by Elegance, Brian Myers, that's three. I'm pretty sure Danny Luna was in NXT for a while. Let's see. Yeah. So Danny Luna is four. Elijah was Elias. That's five. Eric Young is six. Uh, I know this is going to be a deep cut, but Frankie Kazarian was on Velocity and SmackDown in 2005 and 6. So that's seven. Uh, I'm not going to count Gail Kim. Her legacy in TNA is far more significant than her run in WWE. Um, let's see. Jeff Hardy's, what are we on? 8. JDC's 9. I'm not counting anyone who's been in NXT because of TNA. I feel like Kylan King or Killer Kelly was in WWE. What are we on? 9? Let's see. Killer Kelly, were you in WWE? Yes, she was. So that's 10. Let's see. Lei Ying Lee is 11. Matt Cardona is 12. Matt Hardy is 13. Matthew Raywalt is 14. Mackenzie Mitchell's 15. Mustafa Ali is 16. Nick Nemeth is 17. Ryan is 18. Sammy Callahan's 19. Santino is 20. Mahabali Shera is 21. I think Steph DeLander was in WWE. What are we on? 22 then? Yeah, we're on 22. Then Steve Macklin is 23. Tess is 24. I don't think Tasha was. Tom Hannafin is 25. Tommy Dreamer is 26. Zed Brookside's 27. 27 wrestlers. 28 if you want to count Trey Miguel's attempt to join. No, sorry. Zachary Wentz, 28. 29 if you want to count Trey Miguel.
And you count Tino too, right?
Yeah, I counted Santino. 28 wrestlers are most known for their time in the WWE. 27 if you don't want to count Frankie Kazarian. But, like, think about that. Think about that. Like, this is the TNA's roster is made up of mostly WWE-ified wrestlers. You know, of all of them, Ace Austin, I don't think Ace Austin's done anything in NXT. Ace Austin, can't count Alan Angels, he was in AEW. Cody Deaner, Crazy Steve, but Crazy Steve wouldn't even be on the roster anymore, technically. Eddie Edwards, that's what, 4. We'll count
Uh,
Frankie, that's 5. Um,
Santana.
yeah, I'm going alphabetical order. Jake
Uh,
something, Jason Hodge, that's 7. John Skyler's 8. Navarro and Icarus is 10. Kylie King is 11. Laredo Kid 12. Leon Slater 13. Mance and Masha 13, 15. Santana 16. Moose is 17. Rosemary's 18. Savannah's 19. Shogun's not even, hasn't even been on Impact, so he's not getting counted. So what are we on? 18. Tasha's 19. Travis Williams is 20. So less than half the roster has no ties to AEW or WWE, or their ties to AEW and WWE are less significant than their ties to TNA. That's not good, especially when you look at the roster you have and realize that you don't have the types that are like Kurt Angle or Sting or Scott Steiner or Hulk Hogan or whomever who had that WWE, WCW, what have you type of mentality, that type of aura around them. You know, no one on this roster is on Kurt Angle's level. You couldn't combine 6 wrestlers on this roster to get Kurt Angle. You can combine 7 wrestlers on this roster to get Sting. Most of these cats were mid-carders for most of their careers, aside from a rare push in WWE. Like Nick Nemeth was a couple-time world champion, but he's never a genuine headliner. Jeff Hardy was, but he's been with TNA almost as long as he was with WWE, especially as a headliner. So, like, you know, Eric Young's not a headliner. Elijah's not a headliner. This is a very just toned down, unimpressive roster full of guys that are either aging out or are unable to carry the brand. Now, that's not to say there aren't guys like, God, they should have kept fucking Hammerstone. Jake something has a lot of potential. You know, Joe Hendry's obviously the top guy at the moment. Mance Warner has all the potential in the world, and he's one of those few guys that I wish they got more of, because this is a guy you can build around. This could be your next Sammy Callahan. And yet,
yeah.
you know, he's a rarity. Now, I'm not saying you go and you get Joey Janela, because not every guy from GCW is worth getting. But I do think that when you look at the way, you know, the GCW builds their roster, you look at, you know, how MLW builds their roster, there's a lot of guys. Like, you could go and sign Daisy Kill and Odinson right now from the NWA, because God knows they're not getting paid anything, and build them to be top stars because they have charisma and the look needed to be stars.
Yeah.
Instead, you know, we're getting the Colognes. Marcus, honest to God, while the booking is better, the stories are better, and the wrestling is better in 2025, 2015 had a better roster. Now, granted, you had Mandrews,
Yeah, but that was interesting. Yeah, we know those years well. Man, Drew, that was when they had Team X Division and Team Future Stars or whatever. These are. But
Yeah, we're not repping that the storylines were good.
yeah, just the roster and the potentiality. Uh, would you real quick? Would you call Ali a star if they would have got him earlier and he wouldn't have had as much WWE on him?
No, because like here's the thing with Ali. His gimmick right now is interesting, but I wouldn't necessarily say that he himself is a dynamic personality.
Yes.
He's so I think if TNA had a tiered like a tiered belt system, kind of like WCW. You had the World Heavyweight, the US, the TV, the Cruiserweight. If you're being honest with his abilities as a performer, as a draw, as a personality, he would oscillate between the Cruiserweight and TV title. I wouldn't put him on the U.S. title scene. If someone like Mustafa Ali got to the U.S. title scene or higher, your roster must have fallen apart so incredibly that this was the only option. Like to me, and not to compare them talent wise, because Mustafa Ali is so much more talented than this person. But Ali winning the world title is a worst case scenario on par with Tank Abbott winning the WCW World Title in 2000. I just don't see him as someone who will ever move the needle because I don't see him being dynamic enough in the ring or on the mic to do so. He's a good hand, no pun intended, and he's someone who can help elevate the roster overall. But pro wrestling needs to be talked about like a sport, not like a performance. Mustafa Ali is your sixth man off the bench. He's your fourth outfielder. He's your utility player. He's your slot receiver. He's your third guy to go to. If he gets you 1,000 yards, that's an unexpected and a bonus. But you're not asking him to be Randy Moss. You're asking him to be Wes Welker. You're asking him to be you know Brandon Stokely. You're asking him to be Elijah Moore. You're not asking him to be the number one. He's not LeBron James. He's Kyle Kuzma. And I think when you start asking him to be LeBron James, start to be the ace of the company, that's where things fall apart. But the problem is that looking at the roster, Joe Hendry is your most over guy, and there isn't really a second option. Like Santana's going to peak with this gimmick. That's not to say Santana will peak as a talent, but I feel like this gimmick has already exceeded what he can do, and there's nothing more to go. Like he's the Street Fighter. He comes down in a bulletproof vest, and he needs a gimmick. Too many people listened to Stone Cold Steve Austin when he said, the best gimmicks are huge turned up to 11. No, the best gimmicks are the ones that are fun and interesting and unique and have a personality and are scripted and have fun catchphrases that we can all say along. Pro wrestling is like music. You need your hit songs. No one's ever sold out the Madison Square Garden or the Tokyo Dome as a band without a hit song. What's Santana's hit songs? As a performer, no one's questioning his talents. Like the man in the ring can go, but he's not really one for catchphrases, and he's kind of just like I'm badass. Brr. He needs more, and that's the problem with this roster. So many of these guys and gals need more. Like Masha's already a neutered champion. I don't get how she can be this devastating in the ring and be this violent and so uninteresting. Yet another Russian, Natalia Markova, is doing shit off the top of steel cages, and she's like 8 years older than Masha. Like, this roster to have less WWE influence in it. But I fear when you're giving up 30 minutes a week to the NXT crew, even if you brought in people like Natalia Markova, or you brought in people like Starboy Charlie, you're not going to get better. Like, you're not going to be better as a roster because you're still giving away a third, if not more, of your screen time every week to wannabes and never bees from NXT. I don't know how you
Yeah,
fix that.
yeah, and real quick, because we saw what happened with Grace. Do you feel like by default it's almost kind of long term auditioning, but mostly just one way?
Yeah, yeah, I do. Josh Alexander is expected to join AEW. If he does or doesn't, who knows? Speedball. I think they're already showing promotionals for Speedball.
Yeah, they showed a promotion not too long ago for Speedball.
And it's wild to me because at Bound for Glory, we're sitting here looking at one of the best, rollouts I think I've seen as a
Yeah,
roster.
it's weird because the shows are consistently great. Their numbers are going up and up and up. But this is the issue, and I also think a lot of people other than us would say, this is great. The numbers are going up, attendance. They get more recognition. The partnership feels like it's really moving, but we're talking strictly on the TNA side of things and coming off of the names we lost, which they really haven't filled really at all. I'm glad they got Santana back. He's been doing fantastic. Um, Masha is damn near second to none, except Jordan in the ring. But like you said, she doesn't pop as a character. To be fair, we talked about this. I don't necessarily think Jordan popped as a character.
I think Jordan started to pop near the end when she was like fully yoked, you know,
Yeah,
juggernaut gimmick.
yeah,
But it took a while. It took a while to build to that.
yeah,
She was thick mama pump for a while because she was just kind of who she was.
yeah, and
It does take time to develop the character, but even once she got the character, she wasn't a great promo, but she was
yeah,
second to none in the ring.
yeah. And then we talked about how she was not getting met with quality competition. No shot at the girls. All those girls, they did the highest at the level they were at, but they just weren't at her level. So when she got with Masha, and then ironically enough, really at the tail end with Tessa, you kind of saw what we were talking about. But they got somebody as talented as Tessa, and they can only kind of meet her in the middle because it's kind of where she's stuck at with what we know her to be as a talent versus her perception with the crowd, which they can't do really nothing about. So they kind of just got to lean into it, her being her. And but I don't, but how do you put her? You can't make her the emblem on a Mercedes anymore.
No, and here's the thing: a lot of that comes down to her. And the one thing I kind of want to point out is like Seth Rollins fucked a woman who embraced Nazi iconography, right? She had a lot of Nazi merchandise. Does that make her a Nazi? I can't say for legal reasons. But
Uh,
as I've always said, there's only two people I've ever known to own Nazi memorabilia, and one were World War II soldiers who killed the Nazis and took their stuff as trophies, and then Nazis.
I love how one of the longest going storylines on this show is that you become Seth Rollins Kanye. Like I know we still yo. Pardon my interruption. I know we still raising money for Chris Bay, but I just want to point out again, Seth Rollins fucked it out.
I mean, he did, right? What are we doing? But like, we seem to ignore that. Booker T runs a school where a
Right.
woman was stalked and harassed by a wrestler, and then she was fired by Booker T for causing problems. We don't hold him accountable, right? Like, Triple H has been accused of basically driving Joni Lawler into suicidal ideations, depression, alcoholism, and drug abuse because of his treatment of her during the relationship. We don't bring that up. But like
Yeah,
Tessa may or may not have said something, and oh my goodness, she's the devil.
yeah,
But Tessa's also very unlikable. She makes it easy to hate her. She's really made no concerted effort to be better, to apologize, to try to make things, you know, more sustainable for her career. It's kind of like Johnny Somali. Do you know who Johnny Somali is?
yeah. I not heard the name, can't place the face.
He's a internet troll, famous for going to foreign countries and causing a lot of problems.
Oh yeah, I heard. Okay, I heard about that guy. I think he got arrested or something.
Yeah, last I
Yeah,
heard,
something.
and I need to check out the update.
He set
He's
something on fire, didn't he?
no, he's been arrested. He's in South Korea, and I think he's pleading guilty. But I don't know the latest update. But like this dude, even if you were to apologize and be contrite and say all the right things, even if he did all that, we still wouldn't fucking like him because he's
Yeah,
just awful and no one likes him.
yeah, yeah.
And that's the problem Tessa's in. She's probably, and I say this with absolute no reservation and with very little, in my opinion, in the way of genuine competition. She's probably the best female worker in the world. She's fast, she's strong, she throws great punches, amazing footwork, she's never out of place. There are people who are on her level, but on her best day, with the best possible talent you can give her, there's no one on her level. But the problem is she's so fucking unlikable. And she's not reliable as a human being. You never know what kind of nonsense she's about to get into. And so I understand why people don't like her. I get it. She's all the talents in the world and so goddamn unlikable.
Yeah, when the kids use that terminology, it's serving cunt. That's that's a reference, and it's also like the term about being not celebrated but tolerated. That's what it feels like she is in the company. She's there when she be on these interviews. It's like the wrestlers will tweet a picture of being in the interview with her, but they won't mention her.
Mm-hmm.
Just talk about it like it's what feel like one of those things where she's tolerated. Like when you saw that video of them saying goodbye to Jordan, and she kind of dapped everybody up and hugged, and she kind of just blew past Tessa. Like it's one of the it's a thing. It's a thing. Like we kind of seeing like just how many people apparently didn't like Hulk Hogan that's in the business. Um, and whatnot. I think a interview just dropped with Scott Steiner, and apparently there was a long term thing there. I think Taker feels a way about him as well. It's because he showed his true colors at various points throughout his career. Um, by the way, they gave it a care. Uh,
Oh, did they?
yeah. So, but yeah, it's just it's a bit perplexing. They do need to. They would benefit from bringing in some names and getting them to that point. Now they don't need to do another invasion angle. And God, they don't need to copy whatever in the hell NXT is freaking mixed with Nexus and that bondage group that they had. That weirdo combination. But they because if we never see another invasion angle in TNA again, it'll be too soon. But Jesus. But yeah, they got to do something. And I think in a lot of ways this partnership has provided them with a convenience in the interim of them not really actively seeking those talents they need to replace,
Mm-hmm.
so they can kind of just pad a little bit. But we don't know a lot of the big wigs behind the scenes. We know Santina, we know Gail Kim, Dreamers back there, and maybe a couple others, but we don't know the actual business wigs behind the people who might make those moves. So it's I don't know. Like you said, evolve. I don't know how you feel about them potentially getting some Ring of Honor talent. God knows they're not necessarily setting the world on fire. So
I think some
I,
of this would be a lot easier to, you know, accept if you were landing guys like Edge or Adam Copeland, Cope, whatever we want to call him. If you were landing the Josh Alexanders in free agency, when you don't land those major names, you kind of expose your roster a bit. And when you look at some of the names they have, and like you look at Evolve, Ring of Honor, when you look at these groups, their existence and their ability to acquire talent is part of the issue. Because once these guys get on a roster, for lack of a better term, they lose out on whatever potential they have in that form. Like as a profession, not enough people realize that when you go from a company to a company, unless you're Sting or Kurt Angle or Hulk Hogan, you need to change up who you are. You can't just go from being Johnny somebody to Johnny somebody and then be like, oh my goodness, he's so cool. And that's kind of the issue. Like Nick Nemeth, while he can still work in the ring, the reason why he didn't really pop with the audience is he's still just the same dude he's been for the last 15 years. And that's not much to talk about. His brother is more interesting to watch than Nick. Like, think about that nonsense. Ryan Nemeth works better on television right now than his world champion brother. Can you believe that nonsense? TNA needs to do something with the roster. They need to get better talent. They need to get fresher talent. They need to get people who aren't, on AEW or WWE television every single week. And if they do sign people who were on WWE and AEW television, they need to give them a gimmick that isn't something that they've already done with. And like here, a perfect example of doing that but not working is Alan Angels. Like he came in, former member of the Dark Order, or whatever the fuck they're called, changed himself up to a rock star. I'm the rock star, Alan. But he's not a rock star. He doesn't sing, doesn't play instruments, doesn't do anything. So it kind of flopped. Plus, he's got a generic look. He's not that interesting, and he's not that talented in the ring. Where you can be like, oh yeah, he's so good. I need to have him on my roster. Like nothing about him pops. But usually that's the way to go. You just can't go in that direction with people who are at best average. And that's kind of TNA's issue. They're bringing in average talent, trying to give them a makeover on one side. And then the other side, they're bringing in talent who are super talented, but not giving them a needed makeover. I think about like BG James, Conan, and Ron Killings when they formed up to be the Three Live Crew. They were still mostly themselves, but they got a new look. Road Dogg had to get a new name, just because he couldn't use Road Dogg anymore. They found a way to work as a trio when they weren't working as single stars. But for some reason, be it booking, be it Papa H having more say in the product than maybe you'd want to have, we're not getting guys changing up their look or changing up their characters or changing up their gimmicks anymore. Rosemary, the reason why she still pops is because she's the only one who really does change things up. Case in point, let's look at Ace Austin.
yeah,
Since he joined in 2018, 2019, same look, same style, same everything.
yeah, just face now.
Yeah, he's been here for 6 years.
Okay.
Do something different. Change yourself up. Make yourself unique. Make yourself pop. And that's the problem. We're not getting a lot of that.
Okay, real quick. So, method wise, Ash by Elegance, but with better talent.
Yeah. Ash by Elegance was the right idea. The only problem is and people are going, well, that's it's not a big deal. It is a big deal, especially when you're not good. But like, she's 40. I'm sorry, she's 36. She'll be 37 this year. But like at 37, you know what you are. You're a finished product. You, the possibility of you being DDP doesn't exist. One, because DDP wasn't wrestling for 15 years prior. We know Dana Brooke's not a star. We know she's not a draw. We know she's not very talented in the ring. Yet we're still giving up, 12, 15 minutes a week for her and her stuff. Now, granted, I will say I very much enjoyed the Spitfire by Elegance stuff we've been getting
Yeah.
with like the like the vignettes where they're basically being tormented by a Spitfire. That's been fun. But it's taken them 13, 14 months to get one storyline, one angle, 1 week worth of watchable television with her. Come on. Like, we got to do better. I'm watching all this interesting talent on WoW. I'm watching all this interesting talent in MLW and NWA. And I'm surprised, especially with like some of the indie stuff. I'm surprised that they're not going out and getting some of these guys. That they're not getting some of these indie talents.
You think it's a money thing at all? In any
No,
way?
because like they're landing people like Nick Nemeth, and he's not going to be cheap. So like, is that the reason? I doubt it. I do think some of it has to do with the fact that they're giving money to the wrong people. But I don't know how you fix that. Like, Elijah's not the answer, man. And I can't believe anyone would think he is. I like Elijah. But he's coming in at a time where the talent is so not there. And the name value is so not there. And the NXT of it all is just weighing it down and making it uninteresting. That I genuinely wonder what good someone like Elijah can do. Now, like, you do have potential. Leon Slater's there, although he's got a pretty, C-tier look. I think Jason Hotch is being held back in his tag team with John Skyler. Um, Casey Navarro has shown some potential. Right now, I would say that there's no future world champion on the roster that's under 30. I think Mance
Oh,
Warner's
okay.
your best bet. Maybe Santana.
Yes, yeah. Like Santana is probably the best thing that I don't know that they got that they've consistently booked. Like they've done everything right in terms of building him from the ground up as a single star to potentially be a world champion. Like I said, I think I said on the previous show, he definitely got next after Hendry to me. Um, God don't let them pivot and put it because they do this stupid thing where they'll do a pivot to a heel and then they'll like throw it back on Moose or God forbid Young and then have to make somebody like Santana earn it down the road when they needed to earn it when they ended up putting it on the hill. Because they actually did that to Hendry. Now that I think about it, but yeah, like you said, under 30. What do you see for Slater in terms of the future?
Too early to tell. I think that's the basic gist. Is too early to tell. As a wrestler, he's incredible.
Yeah,
So talented, so athletic, so aware of his surroundings. But as far as can he be a headliner, we're going to have to wait and see because he is still so young. He is still so new. And he is still someone who has a lot to prove. I'm hoping, though, that we also get the other two names from that European expansion that we got. I think it was like Harley. I forget her name. I think it's like Harley Cameron, Harley Hudson.
I wish they could get Harley Cameron, but I don't think AEW will let her go no time
Oh,
soon.
that's right. Harley Cameron is her.
Harley Cameron.
Feel the wrath. I love her. I adore her. She is fantastic. Yeah, but they have Harley. Hudson, or at least I think they have Harley Hudson signed to a contract, and then you have like Mike DeVecchio or something like that. Yeah, I can't remember his actual name, but like you have two really good young other indie town, European town that you were very high on that you haven't done anything with, and I don't understand why not. I don't. Marcus, what do you think the biggest issue with this roster is, if they have an issue?
It's interesting. Like I said, I've been catching up. I do this thing now where leading up to these some of these bigger shows, I just end up doing a binge, which tends to be really good. I've been enjoying what I've been seeing, but to your point, it's kind of hard to when you once you break it down like that and you take the foggers off, and you put the NXT collaboration of it all to the side. They really need to diversify their roster and elevate, um, in that regard, bring in some younger, more like I said, varied talent because they have lost at least what we said about six solid, strong, the great names,
Yeah.
and you haven't really replaced those at all. And like I said, it does now that I think about it, feel like a buffer for them to use this NXT thing as a smokescreen, uh, to either pad time as they're trying to get acquire some of those talent, or I'll just outright not do it right now and use this as a smokescreen. So they do need to pull in some names, particularly on the women's side and the men. I think almost readily more with the women because somebody like Masha, she needs the competition. Jordan needed the competition,
Mm-hmm.
but she was able. Thankfully, she had a Masha. Masha doesn't have a Jordan or well, she has tested it, but like we just said, she can't be the emblem on a Mercedes. And if they try to make her that in a way with the women, because thankfully they're never going to try to do what they did with her before again by putting her with the men. Um, Fingers crossed with that. You're not going to get the same results. So they definitely need to bring in somebody that, both on the male and the female side, that can shake things up in a major way that, to your point, aren't, so WWE coded. But I feel like in a lot of ways, WWE has done a interesting job of catching names like that as well. Like it would have been really sick if they had gotten somebody like a Fatu, but it was just too easy of a segue with the bloodline of it all, and between that and Rikishi's other 15 sons being funneled in, all that just kind of seemed like an easy thing. But then you kind of offset that by getting Hammerstone, but they flop with that. So it's like now I almost have to wonder if they get some of these names that we talked about, can we trust them to know what to do with them?
And that's the other concern.
Spent too long complaining about Bailey and Gresham and some other names. Like that's a weird thing. Like how can you be doing better but still worse at the same? Like it's weird. Like business is good, but it's almost hiding the flaws that we point out.
And the thing is, I don't even think it's hiding the flaws that well, if at all. I think you're able to eat time, right?
Yeah,
But I don't think you're really hiding the biggest issues with your roster. But what I will say is, while I don't think NXT is helping you hide anything, and I don't think NXT is helping you draw, what I will say is I do think you have proven with what we're seeing now, the very, Sammy Callahan's a busted up wrestler who's on the downside of his career because of his broken leg.
yeah,
He'll never be the same. You look at so many of these guys on the roster, and they're either pushing 50 or they were never stars in the first place. Matt Hardy, Nick Nemeth on one end, Steve Macklin and on the other. Then you have the guy who arguably you could say has proven himself the most as a draw because quite literally, I say this with all sincerity. This roster is as uninteresting and un. It's bad. as far as name value goes, name brand goes, as far as future goes, as far as roster identity goes, it's bad. Maybe not in talent, it's not great. All of this, however, goes to fortify the fact that Joe Hendry's a draw. Because if you don't have the NXT partnership, I don't think that hurts them. I don't think you're seeing them struggle to draw in audiences. I think the Hardy Boys are helping. They're 50,
Hmm.
but I think they're still super fucking popular, and I think that's helping you. But I think at the end of the day, Joe Hendry has proven to you that he is a huge draw for you. Now, is Joe Hendry a huge draw for NXT? Is Joe Hendry a huge draw for Raw? No, maybe not. But Joe Hendry's a big draw for you in TNA. And I
Absolutely.
think that's becoming more and more proven. Because aside from the Hardys, what other draw is on this roster? I like Moose, but Moose is kind of in that Mustafa Ali, Eddie Edwards
Well,
category where you want these kinds of guys on your roster,
absolutely.
but you cannot build a brand around them and expect long term sustainability, especially with a gimmick that very rarely changes.
Yeah. Real quick, do you think TNA is doing for the Hardys, specifically in terms of booking, presentation, and consistency of that? Not at all too dissimilar from what AEW did with Sting.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Like, do you think TNA is doing with the Hardys what AEW did with Sting?
To an extent, they're definitely riding that wave. The Hardys aren't, and I say this with Matt Hardy being bow legged as shit. The Hardys aren't as physically limited as Sting.
Mm,
Sting, when he joined AEW, knew he only had so much left in him to do.
yeah,
He could not take a lot of bumps. We knew that. Like
yeah.
the injury
Like
he
Jump Doctor.
sustained because of Seth Rollins, that douchebag, was sincere. It was serious, and it. I don't know how you can shorten a near 40-year career, but it shortened a career. And that's not the same case for Matt and Jeff Hardy. But the way that AEW used Sting to help kind of elevate their brand is the same way TNA is using the Hardys to elevate theirs. The only thing is I don't see them, getting anyone over in a one-on-one, two-on-two situation. I will say, however, they are giving rubs to Joe Hendry and Leon Slater and a few others, and I think that's how they hope to raise the profile of some of their younger guys is by having them team with the Hardys, not face the Hardys, which could work all the same. But
Yeah, and it's weird trying to talk. It almost feels like we're talking about this in a way, almost like a post mortem, just because of the thing of it all. Um, and thankfully it didn't go that way. But what did you see being the narrative, uh, alternatively, if Bay hadn't got injured?
maybe they would have won the belts back. Maybe it's hard for me to say because right now, as long as the Hardys are committed to TNA,
Yeah,
and it sounds like they are at least through 2025, and as long as they can draw, I think you keep the belts on them at least to some extent because this way you can continue to profit and not profit but benefit off of them as a tag team. And that's kind of what you need. You need reasons to show up and watch a TNA live event, and I think the Hardys help give you that. Plus, it gives Matt and Jeff both an opportunity to continue to headline and not be, kind of like how Team 3D was when they went back to the WWE and returned as the Dudley Boys. They had like
yeah,
one big moment in their return, then they became fodder,
hmm,
and that's not what you want. You don't want that at all. I worry that the working relationship with WWE has ruined potentiality. Because like one of the things I think that would have been awesome to see is if you were on better standing with AEW, a Hardy's Edge and Christian rematch in TNA or AEW. I don't think it would have been
mm,
great, but it could have been interesting. I currently think right now I think 261 Ortiz and Santana. I think the most days owned by a championship reign is 261. Sorry, it's 380. It's the North. I don't see the Hardys hitting 380. The Hardys are currently, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. They're currently 18th all time with their current reign with 132 days. They will likely surpass LAX, Ortiz, and Santana the first time around. But then you're going to get into the Motor City Machine Gun, Styles and Tomko, the Wolves, Decay, Beer Money's fourth run, the Good Brothers' second run, Ortiz and Santana's third run, and the North. The North held the belts for 380 days. I don't see the Hardys hitting 380. They could hit 200. I can
Yeah.
see them hitting 200. I can see them taking third or fourth, I mean. But, like, I don't see them hitting. I don't see them hitting more than 2 more months. I could see them losing the belts at Slammiversary, but to who? Because they've been feuding with Fraxium. We're not even feuding with TNA tag teams, and that's again part of the issue. But I'm going on.
It's yeah, it's also weird because it's like I do think honestly some of those names that are in potentially NXT that haven't had so much of a WWE on WWE ness on them yet could benefit from going to TNA on a permanent basis.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of these names aren't really even thriving in NXT, and that's just because they so stacked and packed that a lot of the names that was up top have kind of got pushed down unless they just been able to maintain. But I feel like even with that bridge built, I feel like so many people just feel like it's safer to just kind of stay in WWE even if they're failing than try to go somewhere else and build themselves up to be a quality star because the rub is enough to justify um, the mishandling, even if it's like obvious, which
Mm-hmm.
is weird, but it's that's not at all too dissimilar from guys who probably don't necessarily fit that mold, but it's been their dream for however long to go to WWE. Like we're getting right now, like Penta's hot right now. Right now. You've called it for a long time. It's like, remember when, what the Escobar Ball was supposed to be hot, when Andrade came back was supposed to be hot. What the freak are they doing with Dragon Lee? I mean, I don't think you can complain about being paired with Rey Mysterio, but they ain't exactly put a rocket to his back. So,
Yeah. All of those guys are perfect examples of what not to do and how not to do it. But
they
you're
just
right. If
re
someone like Dragon Lee were to join TNA, holy shit.
exactly. They just refumbled Shinsuke with a new gimmick.
I think Big Show holds the most face heel turns in WWE history. John Cena holds the longest time in between face and heel turns in WWE history. Yet Shinsuke Nakamura holds the most times fumbled by the WWE in history.
It is insane. If not for him being able to go work those Noah dates, he'd have no significant mark matches in the last I don't know what few years.
Right? He's
It's
someone that if he were to get released by the WWE, I would love to see in TNA. I think a run there would help get him revitalized. Kind of like how Kojima and Mystico had big years in MLW, despite being 40 and 50.
yes, yeah,
I think that'll do it for this week. I don't want to keep rambling, but I really do hope that things change and that TNA finds the ability to create new stars again and not just keep
yeah.
relying on aging veterans from another company. But that's my final thoughts on that. Marcus, any final thoughts?
No, same. It's similar to you. I'm glad business is up. Because that was stagnated for a very long time, even when it did feel like they were getting talent. So I'm glad business is up. Look like sacrifice is gonna be good. But a lot of stuff, like you said, it does still need to be addressed. And you can do that even if you want to keep this WWE partnership, which I can't be mad at because it does get certain levels of exposure and talking points or whatever have you. But for us that have been around during the days where it felt like we was watching the Lannisters, if we're in, nothing but a show about the Lannisters, we're talking about the Game of Thrones comparison. And it's nice to be out of those doldrums, but you can still be in the doldrums even if the sun is shining. So just got to get it together. But they are more. I still am more intrigued by what they are doing than certain other places. So
Agreed. So the stories are still good. You still got Joe Hendry, so it's not all a loss. Be sure to check us out at the website realnerdcorp.com, realnerdcrp.com. We're on Twitter at nerdcrp. You can find Marcus on his personal Twitter account at paradoxkid, PARADOXKID.
that's me.
You can also find him on his other podcast, The True Penny Show, TRUEPENNYSHOW on Twitter. Find me on Twitter at Chad Nerdcorp, CHEDNERDCORP. You can also find me on Chad's Photo Hut on Instagram, CHADSPHOTOHUT. Be sure to check me out there. As far as our show next week, we'll see how the news shakes out. I'm not going to sit here and want to crap on AEW at the moment. WWE is really testing my patience with some of this nonsense, but I don't want to get into that either because I want to focus on the stuff that you don't know about, that you aren't talking about, that I think you should be talking about. That's kind of the whole point of the show. So we'll look at some other stuff and see what we got going on. But I do think we're going to have a good show for you next week, or not. Both things could be true. But until next Tuesday, around 9-ish, he's been Marcus Green. I'm Chad Porto. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for checking us out. Thanks for giving us a chance. Remember, as always, to watch more wrestling. And Marcus, take us home.
Good night, me.